So guys, before we get into the Oddcast today, we just had a quick thing want to talk about. You trust us.
Yeah, well, we have recommendations.
Yeah, and we have a great recommendation today. Well, that was hard to say.
Recommendation.
My wife, her name is Erica.
Yeah.
And her friend / our friend, Kirsten, have started a podcast.
Right.
They are called the
Soulless Sisters. They're a podcast. They are a Christian podcast, a Christian content-based podcast, whereas like we're just like Christian guys who talk about random Twizzlers or something.
Yeah, whatever we want to talk about.
Right, but they are a Christian-based podcast, primarily targeting like 18 to 30-year-old women.
Yeah. That's the main goal. I mean, anyone can listen to it, but that's kind of the main targeted audience. But we just want to recommend that. Want to shout them out. They shouted us out. My wife told me if I didn't shout her out on this episode, I would make her a liar, which I don't want to do.
That's
true.
Go
check them out. They're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the same places we are. Give them a like, give them a comment, and go follow them on Instagram at Soul Sisters. I think. I'm not sure. Check out Soul Sisters. You'll find them. But that's all we got. Anyways, let's get to the podcast.
Welcome back to the Oddcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Ricky.
And we're just two dudes who decided to start a podcast.
Yeah, and today we are going to be talking about leadership. It's the start of a new year. This is our first actual time recording in the new year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's a little bit past the new year, but,
it's still new.
Yeah, still new to...
Lots happened, but still new.
Yeah, a lot has happened this year, and if you don't live under a rock, you know all the craziness that has been going on in the world. But we aren't going to talk about this in a political sense. That's not the point of this podcast. But the point is, we want to talk about things that are fun and engaging, but also helpful and about real life. And so, we're going to talk about, as people that have had people work for us in either a staff or a volunteer setting, and also as people that have worked for someone else. We want to kind of talk about and dialogue what it means to be a good leader and what it means to be a bad leader.
Right. And then you guys also responded to some of the messages that we sent, or the polls.
Yeah,
a poll. The polls that we put out on Instagram about what a good leader was and a bad leader, and whether or not you guys had good leaders. So we'll get into that too.
Yeah. Let's get to the Oddcast.
Well, like we said, today we're going to be talking about different leaders and how leaders are either good or bad. And I think it's important to note that leaders can be good and bad in different types of ways, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like I've heard people say like Hitler was a good leader in the sense of he knew how to lead people,
right,
but he was a bad person.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a bad leader in terms of morals, but he was a good leader in terms of being able to get people to follow him. And so there is that sort of like, you have are they an ethical leader? And then you have also, are they able to get followers? And then you have, are they fun?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the aspect of what makes someone not necessarily morally a good leader, but what are the characteristics that make someone a person that you should follow them?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Not just are they followable in the sense of they can stir you up and make you feel like, oh yeah, I should follow this person.
Right.
Because there's a lot of those that are really bad leaders that are leading people. We talk biblically, leading people astray, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's something we have to be so on guard for, which is why I think this conversation is so important of what is the most important thing when it comes to a person who you're considering following.
Right.
We have to have a standard. Way. Yeah.
Right. Like if you financially, who are you following?
Dirty Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. I kind of follow what he says a little bit.
It's been like since high school, but I think he's got good advice.
Yeah. But so we did our polls. Do you want me to start with the good? How do you want to go about this? You're kind of you're in the driver's seat today. You want to start with the good or start with the bad?
Let's start with the good, because I think a lot of the bad reflects off of what the good is.
Okay.
It's like they didn't do this, so yeah. Let's have you start.
All right. So let's go through the polls and through what people kind of said, and then go back and forth, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about what we've seen in good leaders and bad leaders.
So all of you. We asked the question, have you guys had good leaders? And thank God, everybody said yes.
Yeah.
100%. And we had, 40, 50 responses?
Something like that.
Yeah. So that's great. I'm happy for you guys. When we went and did the bad leader part, it was like
87% had said they've had a bad leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 87 minus 100?
Not
Negative
4%.
13 or something like that?
Yeah, 13%.
13%. Like, great for you guys.
Yeah, well, I think part of that too is what you started. What's a bad leader, right? They've got to been like, oh, well, I didn't. I feel someone's like a bad leader, I just didn't follow them anymore, so they weren't my leader.
That's true. Maybe you were just more discerning than we
were. They're aware. Okay, well, let's get in this. So we asked you guys what makes someone a good leader, and so I want to kind of just highlight a couple of these that I thought were really important that I agreed with, and then kind of bounce what you thought off of that. Does that sound good?
Right. Yeah.
So the first one, the one that kind of repeated, most of these repeated, but the one I saw the most was that a good leader can admit when they're wrong.
Yeah.
And not only do I think a good leader needs to admit when they're wrong, they need to be able to admit that and then do something about it.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? Like in sports, there's a joke about, I know how you're big sports guy.
I love
you're the sports dude or whatever you said on the last.
I do the ball all the time.
Yeah, baller.
I'm a baller.
Yeah. The in sports terms, there's the my bad guy.
Okay.
Right, like on a court, whatever. And anytime something goes wrong, they're like, my bad. Right? Like they just, tap their chest and like, that was me. Even if it wasn't them and like everyone knows it wasn't them.
Yeah.
That's like that leadership quality, like, oh, I'll take the blame.
Okay.
But there's an issue when that starts to like happen all the time because it's now less meaningful. It's just like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's my bad. But if it really was your bad and you keep doing the same thing, now people are like, yeah, it's your bad.
Stop.
Do something different, bro.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that's an important trait in a leader mixed with some of these other ones, if that makes sense. So that's why I thought to lead off with that was good.
Yeah, definitely. You have to be able to admit when you're wrong, but then if you believe that you're wrong, it should change you.
Right. Yeah. So some of the other ones that go with that, so someone said patient and willing to lend a hand, and there was a lot of like service responses.
Yeah, a lot of service.
Admitting when you're wrong goes into these, right? Like I was wrong, and as a leader now, like I've got to help out where I've messed up. Right. So like when I was working in a restaurant, I had one of my managers who was, let's just say, not the best of leaders.
Okay.
And would just tell people what to do and then go sit in their office.
Yeah.
Right. So like I'm working as a busser, working my tail off, trying to get all this stuff done. And then, my whole section would be done. And then the GM would come in and be like, okay, now go do this. And then just leave and go back. And it wasn't like, hey, you did a good job. Hey, how can I help you? How can I support you? But I had another manager who was my actual like direct manager.
Yeah.
And he was amazing, where he was the guy that, one of the days one of the dishwashers called out or whatever. And instead of like moving us to the dish pit, because if you move me to the dish pit, that means I don't get tips and I didn't make money, right? I didn't make as much.
Yeah.
He just went and did it.
That's awesome.
So, here he is in his nice suit.
Yeah.
He he covered himself in trash bags, which was really funny.
Okay.
And, tucked his tie into his shirt.
Yeah.
And he just started washing the dishes.
That's awesome.
Like that was, and he admitted like later, he's like, oh yeah, I scheduled this person. I knew that they couldn't be there. That was my bad. And so because of that, I just had to pick up the slack. Like that was a good leader, as opposed to the other person that was like, oh, I messed up. Now you guys go fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's an important part of.
I think too, one of the ones that people said on good leaders was they have to be able to show that they care. Like like you could have a leader who's charismatic and is able to, get a following, but if they don't care, then all of their followers mean nothing, right? Like if they don't care about their followers, then the only thing they have in mind is their own selfish gain.
Right. Their leadership is the end all be all.
Right. Or whatever they get from it, like in that situation, he didn't have to go and wash the dishes. He could have commanded one of the people who he's hired to go and do it, because he would be making money, that could have been his only focus, but instead he decided to kind of humble himself. He just decided to kind of humble himself and show his people that he actually did care about them, and that, he put them in their position for a reason, and he intends for them to be there.
Yeah, I think that was, the next, that leads in perfectly to the next one, where someone said that, it was about humility. And good leaders are able to be humble and display that trait, right? They don't just tell people what to do. They don't just bark orders. They don't just, and they should be able to do those aspects of like when stuff needs to get done, good leaders get stuff done.
Right. And
but
it shows.
They can be humble about how they go about that.
Right. Yeah. Like it shows that like they care about every facet of what they're doing. Like if you're leading an operation, anything. If you're leading anything, and like you show that you're willing to do every part of it, it shows that you care about the actual project. It shows that you care about being involved in all of it. You know, it's like, you know, if you had like a husband who's like trying to lead his family, but then he like wouldn't stoop so low to take out the trash, you know, like he clearly doesn't care that much. You know, like he should be willing to do whatever anybody else in the family is going to do.
Yeah. So sports again.
Yeah, love them.
Let's talk sports.
Woo.
There's a big debate in basketball about who's the GOAT, right?
Yeah.
Who's the greatest of all time? I'm sure
there's the greatest of all Tebow.
Yep. Tim Tebow is the greatest of all Tebows.
Ah, got it.
And the greatest at Tebowing.
Oh.
And the greatest of all time.
Really?
Yep. At everything.
So he's the goat.
Yeah, he's the GOAT of goats. But there's a specific person that I know that wants to come on, and we'll have to talk about this off air, but wants to come on and debate me about who's the greatest basketball player of all time.
Okay.
I think very definitively it's Michael Jordan. They disagree with me. Okay. But there's this other player. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name is LeBron James. You heard of that guy?
Oh, the guy from the Vine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, got you.
So one of the things about LeBron James, love him or hate him, he's a good leader on the court. And one of the reasons in basketball they call it like a court or a floor general. Like they can direct people.
Yeah.
But one of the things that makes him so great at that is he knows every position on the floor at all times.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal for a basketball player. Like most know their position and they know this is where I have to be. He knows where you have to be, where the other guy has to be, where he has to be, and he can all just in his brain.
Right, because he's done it.
And he's that disciplined at making sure he knows every little detail about everything that's happening. And he's got a crazy memory. He can tell you like, oh yeah, 3-minute mark, this is what was happening. And this is where this person was, and this is where they should have been. Because he's crazy smart. And people don't give him enough credit for that. But
wow,
it's the understanding that he knows where he needs to be and everyone else that I think makes him such a powerful leader on the basketball court.
Right. He understands the mission in a sense. Yeah.
Kind of on what you were just saying, like knows big picture and then all the little details as well.
Right.
Right. Because like if I can be a lot of these traits, but if I also don't have a good understanding of what we're doing, you know, if I'm trying to lead, you know, our friend group on a hiking trip and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm real humble about it. And I really want to encourage you guys and I'm telling you you're doing great, but we need to keep going and I'm serving you and I'm doing all this stuff. But I don't know where we're going.
Right.
I'm not a good leader.
Right.
I have all the traits to be a good leader, but I haven't prepared myself and disciplined myself to make myself a good leader.
Yeah. I mean, which is a really great point is preparing yourself to be a good leader or wanting to be a good leader is a good thing. But you also have to be able to lead whatever you're trying to lead.
Right.
Like, you know, like you could want the best for so many people and just be like, oh, I just want to encourage them, like you said. But if you don't know anything about it, you're going to be a bad leader or you're going to be a very destructive leader because you'll try to like train people up and lead people in a way that you don't even understand.
Right.
And that causes a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, and you have to be able to communicate, right? That was another big one on here. The other two that I want to highlight were encourages and good communicator. So a leader is able to communicate not only what the goal is, but how we're going to accomplish that. Right. So like if I go back to that kind of analogy or whatever of, you know, we're on a hike and I'm leading the group. If I know in my brain where we need to go, but I can't communicate that to the rest of you, I'm failing at an essential part of leadership.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, we're heading here. If I say we're just over the next ridge, by the 5th time you say just over the next ridge, you're no longer a good leader, right? At least in the eyes of the people following you, because they're like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Right. And maybe I do, but I'm just not communicating that well, right? Because I might mean the next ridge that you can, and I'm pointing and seeing, but you don't see, like if you aren't communicating that well, then things start to erode underneath that trust in what you have to have in a good leader. And so all these traits, but and for us as Christians, one of the biggest aspects of that is for a Christian leader is that the humility and the to Christ, right, and the desire to honor God in all things.
Right.
But one of the important things with that in the church setting is it can't just be you're a good charismatic leader on Sunday or on Wednesday or when people are looking. And that goes for us as well, right? Even if you're not a pastor, you just might be a person in the church like we are, right? And you lead small groups, or you're just trying to lead a group of friends or whatever. A good leader is the same in front of the people and when the people aren't there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that comes to it, like, a good leader has to be honest and have integrity. And if they truly believe in what they're leading, it'll make them a better leader. Yeah. And if they actually believe in what they're leading for, they will live that way because they want for their followers what they already are striving for themselves.
Right.
It's because they've realized something or have a goal that they believe in.
Right.
And if they don't believe in it, then you're not going to be a good leader. You're just going to be teaching people things that you don't even believe, you know?
Yeah. And that's why I think for at least for me, and I'm assuming for you, the desire to honor God first and foremost, kind of it lowers and humbles that person to go like, I'm not the end goal. The end goal is not self-worship. It's not selfish pride.
Right.
At least it shouldn't be. And
at
times it is, right? I know for me, I've fallen into that, and I'm sure for you, where you really have good intentions, but all of a sudden those intentions spiral out of control really slowly, and all of a sudden you realize, like, why am I doing this? Like, why?
Man, I love attention,
right?
And I haven't fight that, but I do. It's true.
At least we have a podcast where it's not about just people just watching or listening to us.
I know, but we should make it so that only I talk.
All right, go ahead.
No, I just kidding. I can't do that. I don't know what it would just it would burn to the ground. There'd be no rhyme or reason.
But
whatever the name of this episode is, it would be like 3 miles to the opposite side of whatever that name is.
Yeah, it would
even that analogy didn't make sense.
It would turn on a dime.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah,
that's what our conversations are great.
Yeah,
because you just like all of a sudden you just send it a different way.
Yeah. There'd be a lot of like, here's a new topic.
It's like ping pong. You just like never, it's going back and forth, and all of a sudden someone just like really ramps it up.
Yeah, puts a spin on it.
Yeah. Oh, I like what you did there. That was good. Well, let's, what were some of the bad ones that you saw in there? Not the bad answers, but the bad.
Oh.
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I only grabbed the bad answers.
Yeah. The ones that we were like, this is a dumb answer.
One of the bad answers was short. They can't be short.
They can't be short. Well, I'm average, so I'm just okay.
No, nobody actually said short. I just think it's funny. Although it is funny if you look back at like all the presidents, a lot of them are like tall. I think it's just a weird. I don't know. I think weird. People just base a lot of decisions off of looks, which is
that's true.
It's poor decision making.
Yeah,
because looks are deceitful.
A good-looking person doesn't mean a good leader.
Yeah, that's right.
But it does mean they're good to look at. So.
Yeah, true. I mean. Look at Saul. Anyway, we don't have to get into that. Yeah. But he was a good-looking guy, and he was a terrible leader.
Yep.
We're moving on.
Turned on a dime.
That was good. A biblical.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see what you did there.
Cool.
But he was also a scaredy cat.
Yeah, he was the worst.
1 Samuel.
Yeah.
If you have your Bibles, check it out.
Mm-hmm. After you finish the podcast, or do it now. The Bible's more important.
Yeah, it's more important than us.
Yeah, but then come back whenever you have free time.
So, what were some answers that people said about qualities that make someone a bad leader?
Okay, so one of the first ones, and I thought it was kind of funny because it was so obvious, but like, it also was the only one that said this. It was bad intent, which I'm like, we go back to like Hitler. Like Hitler was a good leader. He was able to lead well.
He was good at gathering followers.
Yes, but he was a bad guy.
Yeah,
and he had bad intent, and so I think that's worth saying because like I said in kind of the beginning, there's different things that make somebody a bad leader. They could be not easy to follow or not good at leading or not know really what they're trying to lead for.
Right. Or
they could be super immoral. Like there's a whole lot of things that make somebody a bad leader. And so like when we talk about good leaders, they have to be good at leading people as well as integrous in what they what they're actually leading for. And then they have to be, morally good.
Yeah. You would hope.
Well, I mean, that's what I would say. A good leader, like someone you should follow.
Yeah.
Is they have to also be morally right.
Yeah, I think when I was saying you would hope is the sad and hard part of that is sometimes you just don't know.
Right.
Like we see how many times you see like these CEOs and stuff that are,
oh my gosh,
you know, everyone's like, oh wow, we really like how he leads the company, but then behind closed doors
he's tall and handsome.
Yeah, he's tall and handsome, and just but then behind closed doors he's really mean to select group of people or whatever it is. But what were some of the other things? So bad intent, I agree with that. That's
right. Another one was having kind of like an ego trip or a power trip, like somebody who's just leading because they want followers and they want to have that gain just for themselves. It's not about the people or a greater cause. It's about themselves. Like kind of that selfish gain.
Yeah.
That I think is.
I was just gonna say, which is like everybody in the current culture of social media, right? Like the social media influencer now is a leader in our country, for a lot of things. And like in one post they're saying what you should do and should buy, and the next they're like, this is what which way you should vote or which way you should do all this other stuff. And I'm like, not that them having their opinion is bad, but we have to be able to separate, like, why is this person doing this, right? What is their
What's the reason?
Intent, right? Are we having a discussion about this, or are you just telling me what I should do? Because if you tell me I should buy something and then you tell me, well, this is the senator you need to vote for, you're like, okay, well, what is the point of this conversation? Like, am I following you because I like what you post on Instagram, or am I following you because you're,
you care about me and want the best for me?
Right. And like, are you selling me a product, or are you trying to get me to just do what it is you want me to do? Right. That's a really hard line now on social media, because social media influencers are also, they're influencers.
And they're paid.
They're leaders, and they're paid by specific people or specific companies to do a specific thing.
Right.
So that's a really hard line.
Yeah.
So like the only thing we're paid by is you buying Oddcast merch.
Yeah, exactly.
So like,
we're not sellouts.
Yeah, we're not telling you, what leader you should follow. We're just saying that whoever you're following, it would be a lot better to follow them while wearing the softest shirt of all time that says "Stay Odd" on the front, and it says the Oddcast on the back.
Because you're comfortable, you know. It's like, oh, it's great.
Yeah, this is great.
You could go sit on the couch and fall asleep like right after following the leaders.
Yeah, what a great time to wear this shirt. And
be like Paul, get a Oddcast shirt.
Yeah, what a non-shameless plug.
Yeah, not at all shameless, because we know what we believe in. We know what we're trying to lead for.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we're communicating this well.
Oh yeah, well.
And anyway. I just want to let you guys know that it's my bad that we got sidetracked. And Alex, back to you.
Yeah, I know, that's the first. That's really great. So this one kind of goes back to what we talked about as far as what good leaders are, and good leaders are people who can admit they are wrong. Something that got said again. I mean, it's kind of like just the opposite end is, if you can't admit you're wrong, right? And how poisoning that is to a leadership, because either you get like a cult like following where everybody just believes you're right, and because they haven't seen any of the wrong, or they don't discern any of the wrong, or you just look arrogant.
Yeah, that and that's a huge one for our current culture, because like I said, social media influencers, all this stuff. But there's so many times where we do something wrong in public, but then we're unwilling to admit that we did something wrong in public. Like we want to do that, like, oh, this is a mistake. You see this with athletes and all stuff. Like, oh, I made a mistake, but it's a really hard time for my family, so just respect our privacy. It's like, but if you made a very big public mistake, you need to come out and publicly apologize for that.
Yeah,
this should
absolutely.
be an equal weight. That's what good leaders do. And so I know I've struggled with that at times, because it's hard. It takes a lot of humility to be like, oh yeah, I really, really messed this one up.
Right.
When I do something wrong to my wife and I have to go and say to her, like, hey, I'm really, really sorry that I did that. I was a bad leader. I was a bad husband.
Yeah.
But if like I've talked about before, if I do that in front of my friends, I need to let her know, like, and tell my friends, like, hey guys, I did this in front of my wife, and I embarrassed her, and I'm sorry that I've told her I'm sorry, but I shouldn't have done that in front of you guys, or whatever that might be.
Right.
That's trying to be a humble heart at times, right? Like I don't always do that because I'm not perfect, but
right.
But that desire to admit you're wrong and then change is important, I think.
Yeah. So one of the other answers to this, it kind of intrigued me a little bit, because it was the answer of, they're a bad leader if you realize it years down the line that they led you wrong. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that goes back to the kind of the naivety thing. Because I know, like, as a kid, I probably had bad leaders like you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No arguments here, man.
But, like, you know, there are times in our lives when we are more vulnerable. And whether it's you're going through a bad time or you're young or you literally just don't know like what to look for a bad leader, there are vulnerable people, and there are people who take advantage and manipulate vulnerable people for their own leadership gain and their own selfish gain. And oftentimes those people don't even realize, sometimes till years down the road, which is heartbreaking.
And that's why it's important to kind of ask the question of what is this person, where are we headed? What is this person's aim in this? You know, I kind of hold that there's always going to be somewhat of a selfish aspiration underneath these things, right? Like, not necessarily in a negative way, but a good leader desires good for you because it's also going to be good for them, right? No, there's not really a good leader that's like, oh, I want good for me, and you know, I hope it's awful, or I hope it's all for me and good for you. Like that's not really the heart. Like if it's a company or if it's a, you know, whatever, the hope is that everybody is moving towards a good common goal. Right. And so with that whole aspect of we desire that all of this is moving, it's good to ask the question, are they wanting me to move this way just because it helps them, or does this actually help me and benefit me and grow me? Yeah. Or is it just I'm another pawn in their
pyramid scheme?
You know what? Yeah. Am I supposed to pay the $500 so that they can move up another level?
Yeah. But then somebody else will pay $500 to you.
All you have to do is get 5 people to buy an Oddcast t-shirt, and then you're an Odd Squad member for life.
Right. This is another shameless plug. Really shameless there. Yeah.
Paul told me to do it. So
I believe that.
Captain of the Odd Squads.
Paul, what a pyramid scheme guy, right?
Yeah.
He can't even say anything.
He's just sitting in the back right now.
You sit over there and take the slander.
As we throw him under the bus. But anyways, I think we're coming close to the end. And so I thought that was a great point you just brought up. What do you advise then? Anybody that's listening to this, what's something they can do to kind of look for to help them just be aware or be on guard of the potential of not like being negative of, oh, is this person a bad leader and being paranoid, but how do we stay protected in every area, right? Like not just like we talk a lot about church stuff, but not just church stuff, like even like they brought up at the start, the finances. You know, if someone calls you up and it's like, hey, I want to help you with your finances. Because you know, I'm young, married, and trying to start investing and all that stuff. How do I look for a good leader in that?
Right. Well, I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to, you know, what standard do you have, and for Christians, that's the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. And so we do have to base everything a leader would tell us off of that ultimate standard. But I think also a really good help for me in my life, and something that I've continued to do, is look at somebody who is where you want to be. You know, like look at somebody who, whether it's in faith, whether it's in finances, whether it's in your occupation, whether it's in, you know, like their marriage, and you want to have a marriage that's similar to theirs. Find somebody who is already there and meet up with them and talk to them about it and get their advice, you know, and it could be that you get people's advice in only one area. Right, like there are people who I would consider getting career advice from that I would never get faith advice from. Right. You know, because they might be great at their job and I want to be great at my job, but I'm not going to ask them like deep theological questions.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think for me, the going back to this is all about what's the intention here, right?
Right.
Asking those questions about yourself, about maybe them, and seeing, man, if this person is really humble and able to admit like, hey, I messed up, even if, you know, they're not necessarily where I want to be in my career, but they're willing to go, yeah, these are the mistakes I made, and this is why I'm not necessarily there, but I'm still shooting or striving for that. I can get behind that a lot easier. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, wow, okay, they're open and honest about this, and there's still going to be a caution. I think there should always be a caution with the leader of kind of watching and seeing, is this person who they say they are? Right? Are they and the hard part is
you value genuineness.
Yeah. And the hard part is at times we don't get to see what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah. There is a trust.
There has to be a trust in leaders, but a watchfulness of, if you start to see red flags, how you can go about that. And I think the best way is just go have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I saw this. You're someone that's an important leader in my life. So can we talk about that?
Yeah.
And if you do, hopefully it's a great conversation. I mean, usually if they're a good leader, that will lead to a good conversation.
Hopefully.
But yeah.
Well, we are pretty much out of time. Do you have any last remarks for them?
I would just say if we talked a lot from the perspective of if you're looking at leaders, I would just say if you are a leader, not everyone is a leader.
Yeah,
I would start with that. But if you are a leader in whatever regard, your friend group, your work, make sure you take the time to care about these people that you are entrusted with and encourage them and do it out of a humble heart and examine your own heart to make sure that you are doing it out of a humble heart. And there might be times where you're off base, and then being willing to admit that and then come back and say that to your team or your people or whatever.
Right.
Guys, I messed up. I'm really sorry. I've had to do that with our friends where I'm like, hey, I've been really short with everybody lately and I'm just really sorry.
Own up to your mistakes.
Mm-hmm. And then if you're kind of following that leader, be willing to say something to them and let them know, but at the same time, be gracious and understanding. Whoever it is, don't put them on a pedestal. They're not going to be perfect.
Right.
As we say, they're not Jesus.
They're not Jesus.
Neither are you, and that's okay.
That's true.
And it's a good thing because only Jesus is Jesus, and we should follow him first and foremost.
Be a pretty crappy Jesus.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yep.
But all right, guys. Well, that's the end of today. We are so thankful. Like us on everything. Also, we want to say right at the end here, we're going to be doing a raffle for a couple free shirts. So be looking out on our Instagram for more details on that, just to kind of have some fun. So check out the Instagram. It's going to be a post that drops today, the same day that this drops, which I don't remember what that day is. But if you're listening
Monday.
to this and you haven't checked out our Instagram, go check it out. Anything else?
Nope.
Thanks, guys, so much. We love you. And as always, stay on.